Welcome, story lovers. I'm your regular storyteller, here to help you drift into a peaceful sleep. Before we begin, make sure to like this video, share it, and subscribe for more stories that will help you drift off peacefully. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if there's any story you'd love to hear next, feel free to share it below. The incense in the old sanctuary doesn't smell like sandalwood anymore. It smells like a wet basement and old copper, a thick metallic scent that sticks to the back of my throat every time I step through the heavy oak doors of St. Jude's at midnight. So I'm James, the night caretaker here, but lately, the architecture of the church seems to be rearranging itself in the dark. It started with the pews in the back row, shifting exactly 3 inches toward the altar every Tuesday night, leaving deep, jagged scores in the floorboards that looked like fingernail scratches. I tried to push the pews back into place once, but the wood felt warm against my skin, almost feverish, and a low hum vibrated through my palms that made the fillings in my teeth ache for hours afterward. I found a specific rule tucked into the vestry logbook by the previous guard, written in a hand so shaky it was nearly illegible. If you hear the organ playing a chord that isn't a chord, do not look at the choir loft. Last night at exactly 1:15 a.m., a sound like a swarm of bees trapped in a pipe echoed through the nave, a dissonant, crushing frequency that made the very air vibrate and the stained glass rattle in its lead frames. I kept my head down, focusing on the rhythmic click of my flashlight. But as I passed the baptismal font, I noticed the water wasn't clear. It was black and swirling in a clockwise motion, even though the air was perfectly still. Every time I think I've mapped out the shadows, a new one appears, like the figure that sits in the 4th pew every Wednesday, a shape that is darker than the surrounding night, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. The figure's hat hides everything but a pair of pale, elongated hands folded in prayer. The hands don't have knuckles, and the skin looks like polished marble, reflecting the flickering red light of the sanctuary lamps in a way that feels predatory. I've shared accounts before of the things I've seen in coastal chapels and mountain shrines, and if you've been following my logs into these sacred spaces, you know that a church at night isn't empty. It's just waiting for a different kind of congregation. I noticed a second pattern involving the statues of the saints that line the perimeter. Their eyes, usually cast downward in humility, are now tracking my movement across the floor, their stone eyelids heavy with a secret. The air temperature near the altar drops so sharply it crystallizes my breath into a fine white mist. And within that mist, I can see the faint outlines of people standing in a circle, their mouths open in a silent, eternal scream. I found a door hidden behind the massive organ pipes that isn't on any of the blueprints. A small iron-bound hatch that was cold to the touch and covered in the dust of centuries. The hatch leads into a sub-basement where the walls are lined with thousands of glass jars. Every jar is filled with human teeth, each one labeled with a name I recognize from the parish registry. The humming is louder down here, a rhythmic chanting in a language that sounds like grinding stone. I moved my light across the shelves until I saw it. A jar tucked in the corner with my own name, James, written on the label. The darkness in this lower level doesn't react to light. My flashlight beam simply terminates a few feet in front of me, as if the blackness is a solid wall, leaving me standing on the edge of a total void. If you're listening to this and feeling a chill, you might want to check the archive for my earlier warnings about the watchman's burden, because I just realized my own shadow is no longer attached to my heels. It's crawling toward the altar. The smell of copper is overwhelming now, and the stained glass is beginning to bleed a clear, viscous fluid that smells of lilies and decay, running down the stone walls in thick, oily ribbons. Then there are the bells in the tower, which haven't been rung since 1924. I climbed the stairs to investigate, but the higher I went, the more the wooden steps felt like porous bone under my boots. At the very top, there was no bell. There was only a massive, pulsating heart made of copper and rust, suspended by chains of braided human hair, beating in time with the flickering lights in the sanctuary below. I tried to turn back, but the stairs behind me had vanished, leaving me suspended in a vertical tunnel of ribs and pulsing metal that seemed to be part of a giant, living throat. I managed to return to the nave, but it was transformed. The high arch ceiling now looks like a giant bleached rib cage, and the pews have all converged at the front, forming a wall against the altar. Many of you have sent me messages about strange things you've seen during late-night vigils, and I encourage you to keep your eyes on the shadows, because I can see the organist now, a figure of bone playing the dissonant chord. My own hands are starting to look like marble, turning white and smooth. I am James, and I'll keep recording these shifts as long as I can, but the red light of the sanctuary lamp is starting to feel more like home than the world outside. The figure in the fourth pew finally spoke, but the voice came from the floorboards beneath my feet, a vibration that said, "The collection is almost complete." I have finally taken my seat. The baptismal font is overflowing now, the black water turning into a thick ink that is flooding the stone floors, drowning the memories of the people who used to pray here. I looked out the window one last time, but the street was gone. There is only a swirling grey void of ash where the city used to be, and the church is the only thing left in existence. I can feel my legs fusing with the dark timber of the pew. I'm no longer the caretaker. I'm a permanent part of the architecture, a silent witness to the hunger of this sacred place. The entire building is breathing now, a single organism of copper, stone, and hair. Every pillar is a vein, every window is an eye, and I am just one more cell in its body. I'll see you in the next account, if the shadows allow it. But the jar with my name on it in the basement is finally full of the marble dust that used to be my life. Just remember to keep your head down when the music stops. The bell is about to toll, and I can see you through the stone eyes of the saints. The door behind you has already vanished. The first time the church spoke my name, I was alone in the third pew on the left with my eyes closed during the opening prayer, and the voice arrived inside my skull like cold water poured slowly into an empty glass. "Lucy," it said, drawing the word out until it felt familiar in a way that made my stomach fold in on itself, because I had not told a single person there who I was. The candles on the altar flared at the exact same instant, as if someone had flipped a switch beneath the floor, and when I opened my eyes, the flames stood perfectly straight without the slightest tremble, even though the heavy oak doors had just swung shut behind the last arrival, letting in a draft that should have moved them. The organ began, then a low note that vibrated through the wooden pew and into my bones, yet the organist sat with his hands folded in his lap, fingers interlaced and completely still. The congregation sang with one blended voice, too perfect, too practiced, and when the hymn ended, the silence that followed felt heavier than any sound. Mrs. Harrow sat directly behind me, and I felt her breath on the back of my neck, cool and steady, like air drifting from a cellar. After the service, I tried to leave quickly, but the aisle seemed longer than it had any right to be. I counted my steps, 38 when it should have taken perhaps 12. Father Elias was waiting at the back, even though I never saw him leave the pulpit. His smile reached his mouth but stopped somewhere short of his eyes, which were the color of deep river water at night. "Welcome home, Lucy," he said. Although I had not corrected him about my name, I laughed nervously and told him it was only my second time attending as an adult, and he tilted his head too sharply and replied, "No, dear, it isn't." The words sat in my car with me all the way back to the rented house on Maple Ridge, whose every window faced the church steeple. That night I found the church bulletin in my coat pocket, though I had no memory of taking one. On the back in perfect cursive was written, "Third pew, left side, always." I burned it over the kitchen sink, and the ashes settled into the shape of a cross before the faucet washed them away. The next Sunday, I deliberately sat in a different place near the stained glass window of St. Michael. The moment the first prayer began, the air grew so cold that frost formed on the inside of the glass, and the archangel's painted eyes slid sideways to look at me with something that felt like warning. My teeth chattered. 8 minutes later, I moved back. The entire congregation exhaled at once, a soft, collective sigh that sounded like an old house settling after centuries of holding its breath. The house prefers harmony, and I understood then that there were rules. The rules arrived gradually. I learned these things through small corrections, a light touch on my shoulder from Mrs. Harrow after I once glanced at the font. Her fingers felt like polished stone. "Some things aren't for us to see twice, dear," she whispered, and her breath carried the scent of lilies left too long in standing water. My life outside the church began to thin. I worked at the county library, but I would catch myself at 10:13 every morning, the exact start time of Sunday Mass, whispering the opening prayer under my breath without meaning to. Co-workers asked if I was all right, and I would smile and say I had found a new church. One afternoon, a photograph slipped out of a book showing the congregation of St. Agnes in 1964. Third pew, left side there, I was wearing a dress I had never owned yet. The small scar above my left eyebrow was exactly where it is today. The dreams began softly at first. I would be walking down the aisle, only the aisle kept lengthening, and the statues of the saints would turn their stone heads to follow my progress with wet, reflective eyes. In one recurring dream, I reached the altar, and my own face stared back at me from the wafer. I woke with the taste of iron on my tongue and bruises on my knees, as though I had spent hours kneeling on unforgiving oak. After the dreams started, I began keeping a notebook hidden in the drawer beside my bed. I wrote down every oddity, every pattern, every new rule, the candle flames that never shortened, the way every clock in the building read 3:07 during the moment of silent prayer. One rainy Wednesday, I parked across the street at 2 in the morning and watched the church. Lights moved inside. The shadows cast on the stained glass were too tall to belong to the caretaker. At one point, a silhouette that looked exactly like me passed behind the window of the choir loft. The following Sunday, the sermon was about the sin of watching from outside, and every head in the building turned toward me without any neck visibly moving. Their eyes simply arrived on my face all at once. Mrs. Harrow leaned forward after the service and pressed something into my palm. It was a small iron key, warm as though it had been held against skin for a very long time. "The basement," she said, "is where the church keeps what it remembers." The basement stairs descended farther than they had any right to. Along both walls hung rows of photographs arranged by decade. In every single image in the exact same seat, there was a woman who shared my face. The oldest tintype from the 1880s showed her wearing a black morning dress, and beside it someone had written, "She lasted 41 years before she became the pew." I took the photograph that looked most like me and fled, but when I reached my car, the photo was gone. After that night, the church stopped pretending to be subtle. My reflection in mirrors began lagging by half a second, so that when I turned away, I would catch movement continuing behind me. Once I woke at 3:07 a.m. to the sound of the entire congregation reciting the Lord's Prayer in perfect unison, coming from inside my own closet. When I opened the door, there was only my winter coat, but the prayer continued for several seconds more. I tried to leave town completely, packed the car and drove west, but every road curved gently back toward Milford, and after 2 hours of driving, I found myself idling at the stop sign 3 blocks from St. Agnes, with the church bells ringing noon. Last month I found the courage to bring someone with me, an old friend from college named Rachel. I told her nothing of what I had experienced. She sat beside me in the third pew. The entire service she smiled and whispered that the music was lovely. When we left, she hugged me and said, "I'm so glad you found peace here." 3 days later, a new face appeared in the congregation. Third row from the back. Same smile Rachel used to wear. Same small scar on her left hand from the accident we survived together. Father Elias did not speak at first. He simply sat beside me and said, "The church does not trap people, Lucy. It offers them perfect, uninterrupted remembrance. You will never be forgotten here." I asked him what happened to the other women, and he said, "They are the reason the organ knows every song you loved as a child." I stopped sleeping in my own bed after that. I would wake in the third pew at odd hours, still wearing whatever clothes I had worn the day before, with no memory of driving there. My boss called to say I had not been to the library in 9 days. I'm recording this because it is the only way the words still feel like mine. The candle I did not light is burning on the table beside me, and the flame stands perfectly straight. My knees ache, though I have not knelt today. Sometimes I hear my grandmother humming in the next room, even though she has been gone for 23 years. The humming always resolves into the opening notes of the hymn that plays when no one touches the organ. I sit where I am supposed to sit. I have stopped fighting the pull because fighting only tightens it. The third pew still remembers the exact temperature of my body. The stained glass still shows me versions of myself I have not yet become. The candle just went out, though there is no wind. I think it is time to go back now. The sermon this Sunday is going to be about a woman who finally stopped running, and the church is very proud of her. I can already hear the organ warming up inside my mind. Everything I have ever been is remembered there. I'm no longer sure which side of the door I'm standing on.